Hey guys, how are you all beautiful people? Hope all of you are doing fine. And yes, this is next part of Godlike Hokage in Naruto. The Gura Gura no Mi is known as the strongest fruit in the world of One Piece. In Naruto world, the blood limit would grant the strongest power for those ninjas. But what if the Gura Gura no Mi is found in the world of Naruto and after it is eaten it will be like a blood limit power? Well, the MC just took that fruit. This story begins before the Second Ninja War by 2 years. So let's start without any delay. From the fact that Naito left Konoha with the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, then he took charge of the Rain Village, it is evident for the world that the relationship between the two has dropped to the freezing point. As a result, the 4 major villages that had been eager to make a move have finally begun their operation for a strong hit. Although it's still too soon, the Third World War was on the door. The resources of the major 4 villages were limited, and they wanted their revenge from Konoha, mainly the sand and the cloud. You want to say that Naito is the reason behind all of this? Not Konoha. But who dares to provoke Naito? Killing Hanzo and taking his village has already pushed Naito's name to the peak, and some people have even started to compare him to Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage of Konoha. Although it seems to them that Naito is not as strong as him, yet there's no doubt that he's the only person that can be compared to Hashirama, and he's truly the new god of Shinobi. And there's another point, even by some miracle you managed to kill Naito, what good will come from it? If you kill him, you will only get the Rain Village, which their resources are also limited. This is the real face of this world. The 5 major villages only move for profit. In the original, all the 5 major villages knew about the Akatsuki, but none took the initiative to deal with them, because they won't win anything from it. They kept this until the Akatsuki got stronger, took their Baijua, created an army, revived Uchiha Madara and declared war on them. Only then they reacted, but it was too late when they knew they couldn't deal with them alone. They forgot about all of their conflicts that 3 wars didn't solve and made an alliance. And because no one dares to provoke Naito, they sent orders for their ninjas in the Rain Village to not try to cause any troubles. Some of them have even called their Shinobis out of the land of rain borders. All of a sudden, the fear and panic got spread, the whole world sank into chaos, and a new war was about to break. However, peace came to the Rain Village. Many of the people inside the Rain hated Naito and were fearful of him. However, when they saw how the Shinobis from the other villages has left, and the peace came to their land, their fear turned into incomparable respect and admiration. In the eyes of the civilians, in this short time, Naito's status has surpassed Hanzo, and they regarded him as a god who saved their land. Rain Village. The tallest building in the center of the village. The whole building has been renewed and remodeled. At the highest point, there was a large room. This was Naito's office. At this time, Naito was standing in front of that window, looking at the falling rain outside. The way he looked was profound, and no one knew what he was thinking. Many people could see Naito's shadow through the window, and all of them, whether they were ninjas or civilians, had a look of respect and admiration. In their eyes, if Hanzo is a demigod, Naito is a god. Naito raised his head and looked at the dark clouds covering the sky, then he looked again at the Rain Village, then turned around. Just as Naito turned around, the door's office was pushed open. Naito-sensei, all the arrangement you've tasked us with has been done, and the Anbu has been dissolved. Kanon walked in with a document and nodded respectfully at Naito, then she spoke and placed the document on the table in front of Naito. Seeing this made Naito smile and say, "You're acting like the other Shinobis, even your tone became strange." Kanon's cheeks turned red, with a trace of embarrassment on her face. Of course, she will be more respectful for Naito now that he become her leader too. She even thinks the same way as the others. Naito seems to be truly perfect as a god. He doesn't just have the strength to make the entire world fear him, but he also knows how to manage the village. Originally, when the leader gets changed, there will always be some turmoil inside the village. However, the way Naito has managed the system avoided that turmoil and even brought peace to their land. Kanon suddenly thought about something, so she said, "Yes, there's one more thing. Kushina-sensei is about to complete the perception enchantment around the village. From now on, the rain will become safer and more stable." "Yes, I know." Naito nodded. The rain was much smaller than a village from Konoha. The Ultra Perceive can almost cover the whole village. However, it is difficult for Naito to keep that long range for the whole day. Because the rain is small, it's more convenient to set up a perception enchantment around it like Konoha. Kushina is very good with enchantment. She picked some good shinobis from the rain, then they began the work. In less than half a month, they completed it. Because of this, Kanon started to respect and admire Kushina, and she also started to add the word sensei after her name, although they were at the same age. Kushina-sensei is really amazing. Not only she's second in strength to Naito-sensei, but also the way she handles things is amazing. Kanon stood next to Naito, then she said these words with a hint of admiration in her tone. Listening to Kanon's words made Naito smile. Speaking of this, Kushina has also looked happy, and she is very gentle to everyone. Everyone is different and has special advantages. Is it? Listening to Naito, with a simple look on her face, Kanon asked. Of course. Naito patted Kanon's shoulder and smiled at her. Compared to Kanon, Kushina is not suitable for the role of an assistant. Let alone Kanon is more familiar with the Rain Village. Kanon has a quiet and elegant character that can deal efficiently with these trivial matters. After he took charge of the Rain Village, Naito undoubtedly had the highest ranking, with him being appointed as the new leader of the village. Kushina, Kanon, and Yoriko were the highest after him. Of course, between the three of them, Kushina was the highest since she was as strong as their teacher to them. Both of them also call her sensei. However, Kushina doesn't like to deal with trivial matters, so most of the things were handled by Yoriko and Kanon. However, Yoriko was handling things autonomously, while Kanon was only following Naito's direct orders with complete obedience. In the eyes of the people in the village, nothing would be compared to Naito. He was their leader, and his words should never be questioned. Kushina is next after him in both strength and status, then both Yoriko and Kanon. Although they were much weaker, yet the two of them were Naito's disciples, and no one would dare to disrespect them. As for Kushina, with her monstrous powers, no one dares to disrespect her. After them, there will be the former Anbu captain, then the captain of the Rain Guards, and so on. The Anbu captain is a Kage level and was the strongest after Hanzo. Originally, he wasn't convinced by this new ranking. He knew that Naito is much stronger than him, but he felt like he should be stronger than Kushina and the others. However, after she showed off her Kyuubi mode, he finally understood that he cannot be compared to Kushina. Kanon kept standing quietly next to Naito, waiting for his further commands. Naito walked into the window and looked at the sky. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed in the sky, then faded away at the next moment, then turned invisible. Completed. Looking at that strange scenery in the sky, Naito nodded. This was a sign that Kushina has finally finished working on the enchantment and it's finally activated. Kanon walked toward the window and looked at the sky outside. After a while, Naito turned to Kanon and nodded. We've finished all the arrangement, there shouldn't be anything else. Therefore, I will be gone for the next few months. Naito-sensei is leaving. Kanan looked confused. During this time, natural energy has finally blended into Naito's body. And he needed to leave and absorb more so he could achieve the second stage of the Sage Mode. Naito looked like he spaced out for a moment. After that, he looked again at Kanan, then he said, "After I leave, you will take control of the intelligence department. I want you to focus on Nagato's movements. At the same time, I want you to collect every information available about the Baijua." Understood. Kanan banded a knee to Naito, then she turned and left his office. Shortly after he left, the door got pushed again. It was the commander of the enchantment construction team, and she wanted to inform the leader about the latest updates. Easily done. After coming in, Kushina smiled, then rushed toward Naito and hugged him, saying, "The village is much smaller than Konoha, finishing it wasn't that hard after all." "Is that so?" Naito smiled, then pinched her cheek and said, "If you didn't have Kurama's chakra, would you be able to do it this easily?" Kushina didn't like what she heard. Naito seemed like he underestimated her strength, which made her say, "Kurama's power belongs to me, it's also a part of my strength." "Of course, I didn't say it wasn't." Naito looked at her and couldn't help but notice the smirk on her face. He knew for sure what was gonna happen next. The moment she opened her mouth and was about to bite him, he reached for an apple on his table and put it inside her mouth. Kushina took a bite from the apple, then a smug grin appeared on her face. Naito suddenly showed a helpless expression, then he wondered, when did the bitten part become a thing between them? "By the way, there's something wrong about how your disciple is looking at you." Kushina leaned on Naito's shoulder while she finished eating the apple. Naito touched her little cheeks and smiled, "Are you jealous?" "Hey, if a girl likes you, I would naturally be jealous. The fruits of the whole ninja world won't be enough to stop my jealousy." Kushina said this and hugged Naito tight. Naito was getting more handsome as he was growing up. With his silver hair and his good-looking face, he wasn't just the strongest but maybe also the hottest in the world, which made him admired by countless people. And a lot of those people were girls who fell in love with Naito from just hearing stories about him, and how he heroically defeated two Hokages. "Well, don't overthink this matter. I will be leaving tomorrow, it's only for 2 months, I wanted to leave this for you." Naito gently kissed her cheek, then he took off his golden ring. Kushina revealed a strange expression. Not because of the ring, she knows all about the Kusanagi sword. After she injects her chakra in, her strength can reach a higher level along with Kurama's mode. What made her feel strange was that Naito was planning to go somewhere else without taking her along. "Where are you going?" "Mount Myoboku." "Yes, it seems like I forgot to tell you about this." Naito remembered that he didn't mention anything about Mount Myoboku after he returned, although he already explained to her everything he knew about the Sage Mode when one time before the topic was casually mentioned. Being familiar with the topic, Kushina gently nodded when he explained to her why he needed to leave again. Kushina took the Kusanagi ring, although she felt that he didn't need to give it to her. She was already strong enough after she perfectly learned how to control Kurama's chakra. However, Naito felt the need to give it to her. She's much stronger with the Kusanagi ring, even he cannot suppress her easily, let alone Nagato. This way, he can go to Mount Myoboku and focus on his training without being worried about her safety. Mount Myoboku. The place was filled with life as always. Everything was tremendous, from the plants to the toads who lived in this place. There was a slight surging of the natural energy in here. Senpo, water release, cannonball. The frog absorbed the natural energy, then he slammed a massive water release at the big mushroom in front of him, destroying it. Perfect. The other one on the side. Then he took a deep breath, and prepared himself to absorb the natural energy to release another water cannonball. However, just when he started absorbing some of the natural energy, it suddenly stagnated. What happened? Just as he was stunned by this strange event, the stagnant natural energy suddenly started flowing violently, then like a big river rushing toward another direction. The frog kept looking at the natural energy rushing toward that direction, unable to absorb it. The other toads has also seemed to sense that change in the flow of the natural energy, as they raised their heads with a shocking color in their eyelids. This feeling. Yes. It's that human, he came again. Curses. We won't be able to practice again. In the depths of Mount Myoboku, Gamamaru opened his eyes slightly, then he closed them again and continued his sleep. On his side, Fukasaku and Shima showed a bitter smiles. In the center of the mountain, next to a water pool, no one knew when he appeared, but Naito, who was closing his eyes, was sitting there cross-legged. Naito's Ultra Perceive can cover a range of 10 miles, which allows him to absorb the natural energy in that distance, forming a horrible and huge vortex of natural energy around him. Because of it, even the natural energy that is 10 miles farther from him is violently forced into that vortex, although the rate of the absorption in that range cannot be compared to the 10 miles or less. Within 10 miles, even sages such as Fukasaku and Shima won't even be able to snatch a small amount of natural energy from Naito. However, although it's still difficult, they can absorb some if they stay away from that range. So the only choice they got to keep their training is to get as far as they can from Naito. Naito didn't care about the troubles he was causing to the toads. After all, the mountain was massive, they don't need to stay in the center while he's here. The gates that got almost drained out of natural energy were once again getting filled from the very first one. Natural energy can be considered as raw energy which contains unlimited vitality. This energy, when used along with the Sage mode, can provide a powerful regeneration to the user. As a user of the reverse Hakemon Tonku, this technique has cost Naito some of his vitality. However, it's not as terrible as the ordinary technique because the penalty is death. Now, due to the blending of the natural energy process into Naito's body, his reverse Hakemon Tonku became more perfect, and he managed to ultimately make up for the loss of his vitality. The Hakemon Tonku consumes all vitality in exchange for exploding force. On the other hand, the reverse Hakemon Tonku slowly drains vitality in exchange for constant and permanent power. But now that slow loss in vitality got utterly compensated. Naito doesn't understand the first thing about Senju Hashirama's Sage mode, but after he discovered this new thing about the natural energy, he could figure out that Hashirama didn't gain this extra ability from his Sage mode. Otherwise, he wouldn't die after his fight with Madara. The second stage that Naito has obtained from his self-cultivation can continuously absorb natural energy and supplement his vitality, which means this can extend the lifespan. This was Naito's final conclusion. Naito has never been concerned about this matter before because he was already young and at the peak of his physical strength. The world aging was still too far away from him to be a thing, so even if his body was supplementing some extra vitality, it was difficult for him to notice. But this time, that extra vitality was more than just a bit, and even he could feel his skin become more shiny and spotless. Naito wasn't sure if this is gonna lead him to gain eternal life, but at least aging will become extremely slow from now on, much slower than other people. Who is not eager to be immortal? Even Naito would be happy to have that. However, this wasn't the right time to be distracted. He cannot afford to lose focus. Naito needed to be realistic and think more about how to get stronger. He's currently so close to being at the peak of the Shinobi world. When it comes to immortality, it's not impossible to achieve in this world. It's not just Kaguya, the mother of all the Shinobis. If you know the right hand sign, you can get reincarnated by the Edo Tensei, then gain some sort of immortality. Of course, this can be a little bit uncomfortable since you won't feel anything and your body will look ragged. The real immortal is Hagoromo. He lived for thousands of years. Even his death didn't stop him from existing in the world since his chakra itself was immortal. He kept monitoring everything in the world, and he could even give Naruto and Sasuke his power. What's even more amazing is Obito, who died by Kaguya's hands. He then went to meet Rin for a few moments, caught up with her. Then he again used his Mangekyo Sharingan to force himself out of heaven to the Shinobi world, and gave his eye to Kakashi. It's just like a bug. In this world, life and death are really nothing. People can go and back with some forbidden ninjutsu, seals, Sharingan, Rinnegan, or even by worshipping a god. Of course, it is definitely not a good experience to die. Naito didn't want that at all, nor see the people around him experience it. Konoha. Sarutobi was having trouble calming himself or even sitting down. According to the current situation in the world, the Third World War was inevitable. And Konoha was undoubtedly about to face a siege from the 4 major villages. Even if the 4 great villages won't cooperate, and ended up fighting each other, Konoha was undoubtedly gonna be the most to suffer. If he can bring Naito back to the village, this pressure will be easily relieved. After all, he's the only man who managed to raid a whole village and kill its kid. The 4 major villages will undoubtedly think twice before provoking him. However, whether it's Sarutobi, Danza, or the others, they definitely don't want Naito to come back. His existence in the village alone can cause particular problems that are difficult to deal with. Let alone his worthiness for the position of the Hokage. They cannot hand the villages to Naito, to a complete strange. The roots are always crucial in this world, even if you're born in Konoha, but taken as an Uchiha member, it will be impossible for you to be a Hokage. Similarly, it's even more impossible for Naito, who is an outsider, to rule the village. They need him, but they also don't want him in the village because they won't be able to handle these problems. Therefore Naito won't come back. Consequently, they will end up facing the 4 major villages alone. Moreover, there's one more important question. Will Naito be willing to come back? As he was smoking his pipe looking at the rain, suddenly someone opened the door office and walked in. Hokage-sama, I got some news from Mount Myoboku. Naito is currently there practicing his sage mode. Jiraiya looked at Sarutobi and said, allow me to contact him. Sarutobi didn't reply, he kept smoking his pipe while looking at him. Jiraiya gritted his teeth, then said, even if he's an outsider, even if he's from the Kusanagi clan, Naito is also a ninja from Konoha, he can stop this war. So what if he's too powerful? He has never tried to harm us. He might act like it, but Jiraiya wasn't a fool, and he was fully aware of the current situation. Just when he was about to answer him, someone else interrupted him. Impossible. Danza opened the door and walked in. He said coldly, Konoha will never be handed over to an outsider. We're not that weak, we're not afraid of anyone. Danza wanted that war, he wanted an opportunity to lead Konoha to prosperity, and this was his chance by crushing the other villages, and he needed Naito out of it. so he could be the new hero. The only problem is that Naito has taken the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki with him. Even if we're not afraid of war, we cannot let the war just break out this easily. Once it's fought, countless people will suffer from it. Jiraiya couldn't handle himself and shouted these words at Danza. Danza stared at Jiraiya then said, "War will lead them to a better peace." Sarutobi kept hearing their grumbling and mumbling for a while, but he never spoke a word. He kept smoking his pipe, then he finally took a deep breath and turned his back to them. Mount Myoboku. A figure was sitting on the table with some steamed and fried various insects on it. Jiraiya-chan, come on, don't hesitate to dig in, I've prepared this special meal for you. Shima looked at Fukasaku and smiled. He looked at the table, then his mouth suddenly begun to twitch. Just from the smell he felt like he's gonna throw up. No, I have already eaten. Moreover, it's not time to relax, we need to keep an eye on Naito. When he mentioned Naito's name, Shima looked somehow full of sorrows. Jiraiya-chan, listen to me, do not try to fight with that guy. Ogama-san ordered us to not intervene with this matter, even if we don't like it. We cannot help but follow the orders. I understand, I won't fight him, even with the power of the Sage Mode I won't have a chance against him, his strength has reached a level that I can't even touch. Jiraiya took a deep breath, and suddenly his expression became serious. At that moment, he couldn't help but smile a bit, he actually felt impressed. When he goes back a few years before, Naito was just a little child trying to survive a conflict he had with the Uchiha clan that none has thought he would. However, in the blink of an eye, Naito was standing at the peak of the world. Even the 5 major villages recognized him as the new god of Shinobis. He still can remember the time when Naito was just struggling to survive. However, the war has really changed him. Sitting cross-legged in front of the water pool, Naito was still constantly absorbing natural energy. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, with stopping absorption, he looked calmly into the distance. Naito didn't look surprised. Although he didn't see him for a while, Naito wasn't that happy about it. Obviously, after he took charge of the Rain Village, Konoha is willing to fight that war alone and won't ask him to return. Naito didn't know if this is what Sarutobi wants, but even if he doesn't like it, the other elders won't allow him to talk to Naito, especially Danza who only thinks about war. You Naito. Jiraiya walked toward him while he was handling 2 teapots along with 2 cups. He walked down toward Naito. Then he sat next to him and smiled. This is special tea from Mount Myoboku, it's full of rich natural energy, only people who can control the natural energy can drink it. As he was saying these words, he poured a cup for Naito and himself. Naito didn't hate him, he just didn't like Jiraiya. The relationship between the two wasn't that good before. If it were Tsunade he would have been happier to see her. He would even stand for her and smile. It's not that bad. After he took a sip, Naito nodded slightly. He knew about this tea. He could see Shima and Fukasaku often drink it, but he was too lazy to go and grab him a cup. This tea was really special, was full of vitality, and better than any other ordinary tea. Jiraiya smiled back at him, then he took a sip and said, "Of course. There's no ordinary tea in the Shinobi world that can match it, even some good wines don't taste as good as this one." Jiraiya said this, then he paused for a little bit, and whispered, "Can't you really just come back?" Naito put the teacup on the ground, then he said, "I don't care about any of this, even if I return to Konoha, will you guarantee that Kushina will not be hated by the people in the village?" This. Jiraiya didn't know how to respond. The last accident of the Kyuubi felt like a thorn in their hearts. This will never be erased at all. They even looked happy by hearing the news of her departure. Moreover, the people inside the village have grown more afraid of Naito's strength after he left, although they respected him before. This is not all. If I said I wanted to become the next Hokage, will Konoha allow me? Seeing how Jiraiya couldn't answer him, he added one more question that he cannot answer. This sentence made Jiraiya's expression full of bitterness. Even if he wanted to promise him these things, he couldn't help but shake his head. He couldn't promise him something like that, whether it's Sarutobi or Danzo, the two of them will never allow it. If Naito was just like Minato, although he's not from the Sanju or one of the existing clans in the villages, as long as he was born in the village and proved his worthiness, he can become the next Hokage. Look, there's nothing to say about this matter. Jiraiya sighed and stood up. He showed a pleading expression to Naito. Then he said, "You Naito, I only hope that if Konoha needed you, you would be there to help." Naito gazed at Jiraiya. The look in his eyes was calm and deep, but he didn't speak a word of it. Naito didn't refuse or agree. If Tsunade is in trouble, he will certainly help, but if it's Danzo or the Uchiha clan, Naito will only ignore them. Even Naito cannot be ungrateful to Konoha, because it was the reason for him to meet people he cares about like Guy and Tsunade. After Jiraiya's departure, Naito continued his training. In the 2 months Naito kept practicing in Mount Myoboku, the third war has broken out in the Shinobi world. In the face of the siege from the 4 great villages, Konoha didn't have the slightest fear. They entirely depended on the resources they plundered from the Second War, which they turned into power after a few years. The number of ninjas they have is much higher than any of the other major villages. Moreover, due to Naito's existence, a lot of things have changed. Sakumo didn't die, and Guy received the attention he needed from the start, which gave them a better chance. Precisely because of this reason, the 4 major villages stopped fighting each other and decided to focus on Konoha. In the original, Konoha has also fought against a siege from the major villages. However, there was also a conflict between the clouds and the rock. Eventually, it led the Third Hokage into fighting against 10,000 of Shinobis for 3 days. But now there won't be such a story. Of course, the rain didn't have any part in the war. However, this time, the 4 major villages have made really clear that they want to ally with the rain, and they are treating them as a complete equals. This is almost unprecedented. The rain is just a small village. They are not qualified to sit in an equal position with the big villages and be considered as an ally. However, because of Naito, the 5 major villages are no longer considering the rain a small village. Currently, the world has 6 great villages, and this is all because of the existence of the new god of Shinobis. Rain Village. Among the most significant buildings in the village, Naito chose the highest for his office. Below it there was his house and the place where Kanan and Yoriko lived. The place where Naito lived had a hot bath, which was really easy to get in such an environment. This is the only thing in here that is better than Konoha. Kushina, who was lying there, stretched out her body, then she stood up and walked toward a mirror. She didn't need a towel, just by letting her chakra out, all the water got evaporated naturally. After finishing her hair, Kushina turned around to take her clothes. Suddenly she saw someone in the back. She felt stunned for a moment. How could this person sneak in the bath and avoid her perceive? Without hesitation, Kushina surged her chakra and was about to activate Kurama's mode. However, at the very last second, she stopped because she could finally recognize that person. Naito looked at her then smiled. "Ha, it's been a long time. They don't have baths in Mount Myoboku." Whoosh! She felt strange to see him so suddenly, but she also couldn't hide how delighted she felt from seeing him. She immediately walked toward Naito, then said, "I've just used that water, get a new one." Naito pinched her cheek, then said, "Well, it's nothing compared to living for 2 months with those toads." Puff. This sentence made the expression on Kushina's face change, and become angry. Without hesitation, she immediately pushed him into the water. "You leave for 2 months, then you came, and the first thing you do is comparing me to toads." "What?" Naito came out of the water, and he laughed a little, then he quickly reached out for Kushina and smashed her into the water, then he looked at her and said, "So what if I used the water you've used? It's just water." Kushina drummed her cheeks, then she snorted, "That's disgusting, you even smell like a toad." Naito. That little is actually talking back to him, which made Naito feel like he needs to teach Kushina a lesson. Naito smirked, which made Kushina panic and run away. However, before she could even take a step, Naito caught her easily. Naito spent about 2 months in Mount Myoboku, and he left after he once again filled all the 5 gates with natural energy. He's currently halfway before finally achieving the 2nd stage of Sage Mode. Of course, he won't be able to benefit from the 2nd stage powers before he completes the whole process. Even if it's half done, it didn't blend with every cell in his body. It might not be perfect yet, but sure it made his body stronger. Naito was sitting in his office. At this time, he was reading some information, while Kanon was standing beside him quietly. In terms of gathering information, Kanon was one of the best. She managed to get her hands on some useful information about the Baijua. Unfortunately, she couldn't find any about Nagato. However, she could find some weird information about the Akatsuki organization, and how they are still doing some operations. Yoriko, the former head of this organization, is currently working with the Rain Village. Even the old members have also joined him, and now they are Shinobis from the Rain. It's reasonable to say that everyone has believed that they will never hear anything again from the Akatsuki. However, while Kanon was there looking for any useful information, she found leads about the persistent existence of the Akatsuki, and how they are no longer operating from the Rain. This new Akatsuki is an entirely different one, even Kanon doesn't know anything about them. However, she could guess who was their new leader. It seems like Nagato has actually wanted Yoriko to fail, and the moment that happened, he took the organization for him. However, he decided to keep the name. Therefore, Kanon had decided to track this new Akatsuki, but since they changed their base, it was challenging. The Ichibi has once again got caught by the sand. What is a little bit interesting is the cloud. They managed to put their hands on the Nibi. The Sunbi is in the mist, the Nanabi seems to be in a wild state, and the Yonbi and Gobi are in the rock. Naito looked at the intelligence in his hands, and suddenly, a thought flashed in his mind. This information helps Naito understand where the tailed beasts are currently not where they should be. The only difference to what he already knows is that the Nanabi is currently in a wild state. In the original he was sealed as a child. Moreover, Kanon has also accurately located his position. It can only be said that it's a coincidence. Although the Nanabi is not actually in the Rain Land, he's currently in a small country not that far from the borders. Kanon inadvertently discovered his location when she was pursuing some information about the new Akatsuki. The best choice is to always get the nearest. And since it's the Nanabi, it will be enough. Getting him first will strike them hard. Naito couldn't help hiding that grin smirk from appearing. Having Kurama was enough to blow up their plan, but after they get the Nanabi, they will never be able to summon Juubi. The Nanabi is a tailed beast that can fly. Speaking of it, although Naito is very strong, he can't fly. Using him as a way to travel will be a perfect choice. Naito has not yet thought about being a Jinchuriki. The main reason for this is that he's already powerful enough that he almost doesn't need the Baijua powers. Naito-sensei, the Nanabi is always on the move. Therefore, I have already sent some ninja to keep an eye on his movements. I think it's necessary that we capture him quickly. I agree. Naito threw the folder in his hand on the table, then he stood up and said, I'm familiar with the location, no need to worry, I will operate this mission myself. After all, who else can fight a Baiju? Don't you think we better inform Kushina-sensei first? Kanan asked because she's aware of Kushina's situation, and as the strongest Jinchuriki, she should be able to help. No, I will be back soon. After he patted her on the shoulder, Kanan gently nodded to Naito, then his figure suddenly flickered and disappeared directly. Kanan didn't reveal any strange expression. Instead, she went toward Naito's table and rearranged it. She knew that Naito is strong enough to deal with a Baijua without the assistance of anyone else. She actually believes that currently there's nothing in the world that can be at the same scale of power as Naito. The Nanabi is very cautious, and he often changes locations, and is extremely good at hiding his traces. If they didn't keep an eye on him from the start, it would have been tough to find him again even with the help of perceptual ninjas. In a small village. The place was surrounded by mountains and dense forests. The environment was magnificent in here. This village is bordered by the rain land. A lot of water was flowing from there, which made the landform similar to the fire land. Suddenly, Naito's flashed and appeared in this forest, then he faintly glanced at the front. After his arrival, several rain Shinobis soon came to him. Naito-sama. The Nanabi is in front, I will show you the way. One of the perceptive ninjas opened. However, Naito squinted at the distance, then he shook his head and said, no, there's no need for that. The moment he said that a fierce wind whistled, and the trees of this forest were blown in the air, as that horrible momentum fell from the top. Sure enough, there will always be some small flies following. Well, I don't mind some snacks. The massive figure of the Nanabi suddenly appeared in the sky. Although his body seemed to be fragile, the horrible chakra that was coming out of him made the rain Shinobis look pale. This is the worst possible situation, the Nanabi found us. This situation is not good, we cannot afford to make this a frontal battle, we're no match to this beast. This is gonna be very difficult. How the hell can we defeat a tailed beast? They all looked scared and horrified. The only reason that kept them from running was Naito, who was there beside them. Whoosh! A wave of strong wind whizzed, and made the trees around them get blown away. Even the rain Shinobis found it hard to keep their legs on the ground as they were pushed back by it. Only Naito was standing still on the field, looking at the Nanabi's wings continually moving, while the expression on his face looked dull without any traces of fear. This wind cannot shake Naito's spirit. He stood there firm like a mountain. It's a pity that you're a type of insect, you would have looked better if you were a bird, but as long as you can fly, you will be a good mount. Naito raised his head, then looked at the Nanabi and opened it. What did this human say? A good mount. The Nanabi's heart got overwhelmed with incomparable anger the moment he heard that word. He's a tailed beast, and not anyone, he's the Nanabi. Who dares to treat such a beast as a mount? The Nanabi felt like he needs to teach this arrogant human a painful lesson, then send him straight to hell. Hiss! The Nanabi roared, then he rushed directly toward Naito. He felt like catch him, then crush him with his bare hands. His body was huge, yet his speed was incredible. The rain Shinobi could hardly follow his movements. Shit! How can it move this fast? Under the horrified gazes of everyone, the Nanabi reached Naito in a second and caught him. This scene made everyone get terrified. He's gonna kill him. If he's dead, then they're next. The rain Shinobi was scared and looked like they were about to escape. However, at the last moment, they realized that Naito hasn't got caught. It's just an afterimage. What? The Nanabi looked terrified. He used his full speed, but he could only capture this human's afterimage. Then where is he? It can't be. The Nanabi raised his head, and there he was. Naito was on top of him. Without any hesitation, Naito raised his foot, then kicked the Nanabi. Boom! A repulsive force suddenly hit him and made his body stagnate. The impact of that kick made him fall directly from the sky, and slam on the ground. What power is this? The Nanabi's heart was shocked. He could tell that Naito was faster than him, but he didn't expect him to have such terrible power. Moreover, when he tried to stand back, he could feel that horrible force spreading in his body, trembling him, making him weak. He even was struggling to stand up. He couldn't believe it at first, but is this pain? This is unbelievable. How many years it has been since the last time he felt pain? Who is this human? What is this power? A lot of questions that he didn't know their answers to, but he could tell one thing: this human is dangerous. Under that feeling of pain, the Nanabi let go of his power and roared while his chakra was violently surging. Naito, who was still standing on his back, kept sending shock waves one after another to keep him from standing, while the Nanabi was struggling wildly, shattering the whole place apart. Still, he couldn't get rid of him. The rain Shinobi could no longer endure standing close to the battlefield and had to retreat to the distance. However, none of them could hide the shock on his face. This is incredible. Naito is actually suppressing the Nanabi. Moreover, he didn't use a single ninjutsu, he didn't even use a hand sign or a seal. All that he did was standing on the top of its back. Is this all he needs to suppress the Nanabi? The Shinobi swallowed while his whole body was trembling. The other Shinobis were as scared as this guy. They saw before the information about how he managed to suppress the Kyuubi, but this is more shocking than what they read before. They thought that Naito will use his ultimate ninjutsu to defeat the Nanabi, or maybe he has some reliable seal technique that will restrain its powers, but none of them expected that all that he needs to do is to jump into the sky and kick him. The way he's suppressing the Nanabi is really unbelievable. This damn human. After a long struggle with Naito, the Nanabi has finally understood that he will never get rid of Naito this way, so he changed his plan. Suddenly, the ground under him became soft, and his entire body dived into the ground. What? Naito didn't choose to follow the Nanabi underground, but jumped back to the ground and kept looking at him disappearing, thinking that this is interesting. Hey, this is mean, we only agreed on the flying part. Still, do you think you will be able to escape this way? Without any hesitation, Naito lifted his legs and slammed the ground. Boom! This simple kick made the whole place collapse and crush. Even the mountains around the place started trembling and cracking. The moment the place started to crack open, the rain Shinobis fell back even more in the forest, while looking stunned at the mountain that just got crushed from Naito's kick. The power of the shock force crushed and shattered every layer underground, whether it was rock or mud. Nothing stopped it until it hit the Nanabi, who was escaping. Hiss! This hit made the Nanabi directly sent a painful roar. This time, The shock force has almost shattered his whole body. However, he wasn't gonna give up. As long as he got chakra, he can always regenerate his body parts. Naito will never be able to defeat him. However, this strange force that Naito is using is extremely painful to him. Augh. What kind of power is this? Is this the sixth path powers? No. No. This is wrong, it cannot be, then why can it make me feel pain? The Nanabi, who was struggling from the pain, tried to dive even deeper underground. However, Naito wasn't gonna give him any chance to escape, as he kept kicking the ground, sending shockwaves at him. It was like a continued wave of bombardment that was gonna destroy the whole village at this rate. In the end, even the mountains far away got destroyed and collapsed. The Nanabi got hit again, which made him finally understand that it was a wrong idea to escape from the underground. Hiding in scale powder technique. The Nanabi, who was trapped underground, ignored the severe pain in his body and released a ninjutsu. In a second, he exhaled an enormous amount of powder from his mouth, which made everyone instantly lose sight. However, the Nanabi didn't choose to escape. He stared at Naito in anger, then he opened his mouth again and shoot a massive Baiju Udama at him. Got to hell. Human. The next moment made the Nanabi got horrified when he discovered that Naito he saw clearly that Baiju Udama coming toward him. Naito didn't choose to avoid it. He extended his both hands to the void, and a horrible shock force broke out, shattering that horrifying Baiju Udama. The Nanabi never felt this scared before. Who can blame him? He just witnessed a human being destroying a Baiju Udama barehanded. Whoosh! The Nanabi wanted to escape again, however, before he could even move, Naito flashed in front of him and punched him. Boom! The Nanabi got directly bombarded and flew straight away toward a mountain, then crushed on it. Naito flashed directly toward him, then he struck him again. When the Nanabi was struggling to stand again, Naito hit him one more. Naito found out from his several encounters with the Baiju that the only way to convince them is to beat the crap out of them. Suppressing them only won't do a thing. The Nanabi was in a hell of pain, he was angry, and the pain was driving him crazy, and all that he wanted is to tear Naito's face, but he couldn't do a thing, he couldn't even resist this pain anymore. Under the gaze of everyone in the field, and after a hell of a beat, the Nanabi finally surrounded. In the mountains that collapsed, the scene was insane. Everything was destroyed. The Nanabi, who was in front of Naito, looked at him with eyes of grievances. At this time, he looked like if he was a home pet. What unusual things to see! A tailed beast got beaten into signing a summoning contract. This is the kind of pain he was dealing with. He glanced at the Nanabi in front of him, then he said with a soft tone. It seems like you don't like this outcome. Of course. No. The Nanabi subconsciously nodded, but he suddenly reacted, then shook his head. It's a pleasure to serve you. The Nanabi raised his head and said these words. Naito knows that the Nanabi has a very unique personality, that's why he chooses to control him by power. Kurama's character is different, he's arrogant to the point that he will never allow anyone to control him with power, even if it means staying in a cage for his entire life. On the other side, the Nanabi is a pragmatic one, he won't choose something like that over his freedom or life. In the distance, the rain Shinobis froze in their places for a while. The moment they woke up from their shock, they looked at each other, then walked toward Naito. He could feel their shock. They have never seen anything like this. What have they saw today subverted everything they know about this world. Okay, let's go back. Naito turned at the Nanabi, then smiled. If he's pleased to serve, Naito won't mind acting like a boss. With one step, Naito leaped lightly on his back. On the other side, a few of the other Shinobi came close to the Nanabi. Since his body is huge, they felt that there's room for them also stand on his back. However, before they could jump on him, the Nanabi suddenly stared at them, then flapped his wings. Naito was his boss, of course, he can stand on his back, but not these little bugs. Who do they think they are? Well, he's right about that. Whoosh! A gust of wind swept over, pushing those Shinobis back. Keep monitoring the situation here for a while and wait for further orders. Humph! Looking at the Nanabi, Naito couldn't help but smile. The range Shinobis couldn't hide their fear from the Nanabi. They nodded respectfully at Naito, then greeted him. The Nanabi waved his wings, then flew up in the sky carrying Naito on his back, leaving the range Shinobis with awe-inspired expressions. When he flew up in the sky, the Nanabi couldn't help but think about the possibility of killing Naito by throwing him off his back. However, since he already signed the contract by force, he needed to wait for the right moment to do it. He wasn't gonna end up like Kurama, who was the first Baijuer to be forced to sign a summon contract with Madara. Standing there, Naito took a glance on the ground, which looked extremely small. He couldn't see the people below, he could only see the mountains. Even the hills looked small. Although Naito can float for a short period in the air, he still couldn't reach the extent that Guy could achieve after opening the 8th gate in the original, so he has never reached this high before. Looking at the world under him, Naito couldn't help but walk toward the side of the Nanabi back, then jump to the air. Original, the Nanabi, who was actually thinking about throwing Naito off his back, couldn't help but feel overjoyed by watching this scene. If Naito is the one who threw himself, no one will blame him after that. However, when the Nanabi was about to go for a beautiful run, his expression was suddenly sluggish. Because Naito didn't fall, he actually was floating in the air. Naito took step after step, then he started walking in the sky while some cracks were appearing under his feet. However, this was all that Naito can do. He could only walk. The surface wasn't actually solid, therefore, he cannot use a lot of power to move faster in the air. After opening the 8th gate, Guy gained a hell of speed that allowed him to fly in the sky. For that reason, Naito had an idea that felt he should test. Naito could already teleport using his through technique. All that he needed to do is to use it while he's floating in the air to move like Guy. This level of mastering, Naito has called it Jeppo, Skywalk. The Skywalk is the 3rd stage of the through technique, and it's better in all aspects. It's second only to the Flying Thunder God technique. As for using it in the sky, it's even better than the Super Through. When he first reached the 4th stage of the Shock Force, Naito tried to practice it, but he didn't succeed, and later when he reached the 5th, Naito tried again, but it was still tricky. Now after he managed to master the Sage mode successfully, the Shock Force grew much stronger than the time it was when he first reached the 5th stage. It's currently closer to the 6th stage, and even his physical strength has improved a lot. The Through is based initially on the Brutal Force technique. It is a kind of high-speed blink technique that blasts the force outward, then pushes the user forward with benefiting from the impact. The Super Through is an improved technique that uses more amount of chakra and physical strength. Using it in the air will be 10 times more difficult. It's easy to jump, walk and run on the ground, but doing the same on the water will need a strong control over chakra. Weak ninjas won't be able to do so, and others, even if they can stand on water, won't be able to jump. As for moving in the air, Naito feels that only Guy in this world can do it only with his chakra, while others could use other techniques to actually fly in the air. For example, the third Sashikage uses the lightweight rock technique to make his body very light, while Naruto can fly when he is in a Sage of the Six Paths mode with his Gudodama, 6 black balls, at the back. In other words, the ninjas that can fly are actually very few. Among the clouds, with a stern look on his face, Naito controlled his chakra into his feet, then stepped. Whoosh! Naito's shadow got drawn as an arc in the sky as he slightly moved from a point to another, leaving behind him cracks. Then after a few moments, he began to fall. He was still unable to master it. It's tough to move quickly in the air. After taking a deep breath, Naito's eyes flashed. He didn't give up yet and resumed his training on the skywalk technique. At first, Naito could only jump from one point to another. The distance was really short, but he could gradually improve the distance and the speed. Of course, there's no compassion with his speed on the ground. The Shinobi stayed there by his side. He didn't dare to escape. He kept watching Naito practicing, thinking about the trouble he ended up with. What kind of monster is this human? He's very stronger, yet he doesn't have the sixth path force. He can hurt creatures like the tailed beasts. His speed is very fast and outrageous, and now he can even move in the air. This human is incredible. Under the watchful eyes of the Shinobi, Naito's speed kept improving. He was using the clouds as a surface to jump on. A little by little Naito could use more power by spraying it on the entire layer of the clouds, which make his speed in the air faster and faster. Although it wasn't comparable to his rate on the ground, he was still faster than most of Jonin. Under him, there was a battle between Konoha and the rocks. Some of the ninjas on the battlefield couldn't help but notice how strange the clouds looked in the sky. Immediately afterward, they could notice that its shape looked strange to them, and it wasn't any random shape, it looked like a footprint. It seemed as if a giant was walking on the clouds, which made all the ninjas widening their eyes. What is that? Is that a footprint? How is this possible? Who can make footprints in the clouds? Who can actually walk in the sky? The shock was evident on the face of countless ninjas. Some Jonins have revealed incomparable awe. They thought it was a god living in the sky. The elites didn't believe in such a thing, however, what they saw was real. Who can leave footprints in the clouds? In the clouds, Naito was continually moving forward, ignoring the world below him. His speed gradually improved. Although it wasn't as fast as the speed of the Shinobi in the air, it was already terrific. After a while, Naito reached the rain land. While there are no clouds, moving faster has become more difficult. Although Naito can float and walk in the air, the speed is much slower. With such a rate he won't be able to avoid attacks. Of course, Naito doesn't actually need to avoid any attacks. When he's in the air, any attack can be easily destroyed by a punch. It seems that I hit my limit. If I want to reach my full speed, I'm afraid that I will need to reach the second stage of the Sage mode and open the sixth gate first. After some practice, Naito felt that he reached his limit, and it was difficult for him to get anywhere from here even if he continued training, so he gave up the idea of mastering the skywalk for the time being. The Shinobi stayed by Naito's side for the whole time since Naito didn't reverse summoning him. Naito turned then smiled at him and said, "You're wondering, why didn't I just fall from the sky and die? How can it be? I will never think about something like that." Looking at Naito, the Shinobi said, "How can I have this kind of thinking? Even if the boss cannot fly, I will catch him, then he will be able to fly, I will be the boss wings." Naito could tell he was bluffing, but he was too lazy to pay attention to it. The Shinobi is not strong, but he has various escape abilities which are the best between all the Baijuo. he can fly, and he uses the special powder which directly makes people lose their vision. That was enough to keep him around. Naito looked at the bottom. They were already close to the rain village. He stepped on the Nanabe's back, then said, "Let's go down." Roger that. The Nanabe headed down toward the village, and it didn't take the people long before they could notice him coming from the sky. That is the Nanabe. There's no doubt about it, it's as described in the intelligence, it's the Nanabe. Why is he coming toward our village? This is bad. Their expression was full of fear. The Nanabe felt that his arrival with Naito to the village should be widely spread. Therefore, he released his chakra. Whoosh! The moment he released his chakra, the clouds in the sky started gathering. His momentum was terrifying to the point that people started running all over the place. Even if the Nanabe is weak, he's still a Baijua, which means that his chakra is not comparable to human beings. Feeling this horrible power made the ninjas from all ranks gather in the place ready to attack. Even the Anbu captain, who was gearing up himself to head toward the Nanabe, looked terrified. Is this the chakra of the Nanabe? It's powerful. How can a human defeat such a beast? He's more horrifying than Kushina Dono. Although he knew that the chakra of the Kyuubi should be much stronger than the Nanabe, the Anbu captain wasn't confident in victory. Standing on the back of the Nanabe, Naito looked at the people below. They all looked terrified. However, they didn't look like they were gonna run. All of them took their weapons out and were ready to defend the village. Naito suddenly released his momentum, then said, "Calm yourself down, Nanabe." One sentence from Naito made the Nanabe's chakra suddenly stop, and pitifully withdrew his killing intent. It was the first time for the people in the village to feel Naito's momentum. The ninjas looked confused. They could hear a familiar voice coming from the Nanabe, and before they could recognize it, the Nanabe was on the move again. With a very obedient look, he suddenly landed on the highest building in the middle of the village. At that moment, they could see a very familiar figure them standing on the back of the Nanabe. It's you, Naito, the god of Shinobis, and the leader of the Rain Village. At that moment, everyone was opening their mouths. No one could hide his shock, even former Anbu captain. Okay, now you stay here and be good with everyone. Before he jumps from his back, Naito leaned toward him and whispered these words, then flashed inside the building below. The Nanabe folded his wings, then squatted at the top of the building. For this whole time, the people who witnessed this event were all in vain. One of the ninjas couldn't help but ask, if I'm not mistaken, that was Naito-sama. Does this mean that he managed to defeat the Nanabe? We're talking about a tailed beast who can destroy a whole land here. Whether it was a civilian or a ninja, seeing this scene was extremely shocking. Such a powerful monster has become so obedient to Naito. The look on their faces was full of intimidation and admiration, as if they were looking to a true god. This is you, Naito, the god of the Rain Village. Just a few steps away from his office, Naito encountered Kushina and Kanon. Naito-sensei, you're back. Kanon bowed to Naito, then stood aside. Kushina walked toward Naito, then snorted, "You love big entrances, don't you? I thought that someone is invading the village. What can I say? I really love the limelight." Listening to Kushina's sentence made Naito twitch his mouth. It had nothing to do with him. The Nanabe was the one who wanted to make a big entrance. Naito raised his head, then thought that he really needed to work more on Nanabe's attitude. The Nanabe was right at the top of the building, taking a comfortable posture, and looking almighty. After he managed to defeat the Nanabe, Naito decided to let him stay at the top of his office, so he could always keep an eye on him. The existence of the Nanabe on the top of his office made the people in the village feel awe. Defeating the Shinobi and making him his pet made the people in the Rain Village feel like Naruto has already surpassed being a human. To them he's no longer the god of Shinobis, he's like the god of the world. In the next year, the Third Shinobi World War has finally broken out. The 4 major villages has joined their forces and attacked Konoha, while the formers didn't show any kind of weakness. The whole world of Shinobis in a war. In this chaos, the only land which looked peaceful was the rain. None of the 5 major villages were willing to provoke the rain. As for some small villages, they weren't as smart as the others, however, they all got defeated by the Rain Village. Because they dared to attack, Naruto didn't show them any mercy, he crushed all of them, and directly incorporated them into the territory of the Rain Land. This event has made all the other villages terrified of the rain. During this year, Konoha managed to hold their territories, and because Sakumo didn't die like in the original, they even won some of the fights against the Sand. Orochimaru and Jiraiya also won some battles against the Rock with the help of the medical ninja troops who supported them on various battlefields. The only particular case was Minato, who managed to master the Flying Thunder God technique and become extremely powerful, which made the title Yellow Flash begin to be famous throughout the world. However, he was still too young, it was too early for him to directly command. Thus Konoha has assigned Ino Shikacho team on his side to help him. Shikamaru's IQ was higher than his father Shikaku, however, he was more than worthy for the position of a military strategist. He even reassigned a special task to attack the cloud. Konoha was attacking all the 4 great villages at once, which weakened their forces. However, it has also proved to everyone their capability to fire back. During this period, Danza was using all of his resources to create a conflict between the 4 villages so he could crack the pressure on Konoha. However, he failed. Just when Konoha was looking all good and mighty, the 4 villages joined their forces and hit them hard. The 4 big villages have set out a Jinchuriki. Due to the fact that Konoha didn't have any similar power to defend itself from this attack, because Naruto has taken their Jinchuriki with him, Konoha's dominant defense got finally destroyed. Even if they were powerful, the power of a Baijua is always troublesome. If it weren't for Minato and the 1,000 good ninjas that died that day along with the other 800 who got injured, Konoha would have fallen. Even so, the damage was significant. The 4 big villages managed to hit them hard, and that has caused Konoha to lose all of their later battles. Whether it was Sarutobi or Danza, they never thought that the 4 big villages were bold enough to use a Jinchuriki this early in the war. Konoha was unprepared for this attack, which made the situation even worse. Konoha, the Hokage office. A masked Anbu suddenly appeared from the smoke. He banded a knee to Sarutobi, then he opened, report from the front line. The Rock has managed to break our defenses, and the Gobi's Jinchuriki has crossed the borders. When Sarutobi heard the report, he couldn't help but scream. Damn it! The plan was to carry the Jinchuriki to the front lines with a small group of ninjas. After they slightly open the seal, the tailed beast will come out and break Konoha's defenses while he's in a rampage state, and weaken them. After they suppress him, they will once again advance and repeat the whole process. This will lower their casualties compared to Konoha. Konoha, on the other side, cannot afford to lose hundreds of men every time they use this strategy, which has driven Sarutobi insane. This is just cruel to his side. The war has just started, and the casualties were much worse than the Second World War. The unavailability of a similar weapon in Konoha's armory has caused them a significant disadvantage. If Kushina was still here, even if she couldn't control the Kyuubi's power, they could have at least have the choice to use the same method to fight back. At this rate, Konoha will fall. Danza's plan is not working at all. The 4 great villages will focus their forces on us until we get destroyed. Sarutobi looked anxious, and thinking about this situation didn't make it any better. They didn't use the Kyuubi before in the Second War, because the Jinchuriki's power is too destructive. That power is not meant to be used, but to be feared. However, since Konoha doesn't have one, the other villages found it reasonable to use that power since there's nothing that Konoha can use to fire back. At that time, the only scene that kept picturing in Sarutobi's mind was the one when Naito has stopped the Kyuubi's Baijuudama with his bare hands. If Naito were here, this problem would have been easily resolved. However, Sarutobi's expression was full of bitterness. At this time, Danza entered Sarutobi's office with a somber face and said, "War broke out between the Rock and the Sand village, but they didn't dispatch the Baijua from OU front lines." With a lot of effort, Danza managed to revive the hatred between the 2 villages. They ended up fighting each other, but he still failed to get Konoha out of this plight. This makes no sense. Sarutobi shook his head, then finally sighed and said, "There's only one way to end this." No. Danza knew what Sarutobi was gonna say, and he couldn't help but gnaw his teeth and yell. However, this didn't prevent Sarutobi from ending his sentence with a stern expression, "Do you have any better solution?" Danza kept quiet for a moment then said, "We can use the same way to start a conflict between the 4 major villages and the rain." Do you hear yourself? You'd rather crush him than ask his help. Danza kept silent, then he exclaimed, "It doesn't matter, he's not one of us. I don't care if he chose to leave, but he also took our Jinchuriki. We cannot forgive something like this. If you just handed me the Jinchuriki power earlier on, none of this would have happened. We could have even controlled Naito. Obviously, he cares about the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki that much." Danza wasn't only screaming, but he was also letting his momentum out. This argument between him and Sarutobi made the whole building shake. Some of the Anbu could even feel it, but they took a deep breath and continued their work. After a while, 2 more people walked into Sarutobi's office. The only people who can enter the Hokage's office and interrupt Danza and Sarutobi were Homura Mitokado, and Koharu Utatane. It's not the time to fight with each other. We need to face this current situation together. Mitokado said this then looked at both Danza and Sarutobi. Both Sarutobi and Danza got back to their senses and nodded at each other. Mitokado looked at Utatane and Sarutobi then to Danza and said, "We understand now that letting Naito leave the village was a big mistake. Compared to letting Konoha gets destroyed, handing it to Naito and making him the Hokage is better." The moment he heard this sentence, Danza clenched his teeth. He looked like he wanted to say something back but he couldn't. Utatane looked at Danza then she said, "The only choice we have is to ask for Naito's help. This situation is no longer about us letting him stay. We don't know if he's even willing to come back. We don't need him, he's a traitor, he took our Jinchuriki, he's the reason we're in such distress, so he should solve this matter for us. But there's no way we're letting him come back." Danza still insisted that Naito shouldn't return to Konoha. Because once he's back, all his plans will be in vain. "Well, since you agree on asking for his help, that's good enough, but the problem is, how can we make him help?" Mitokado was indulged and looking contemplative. Sarutobi, who has been silent for a long time, has finally spoken this time and said, "We could send Tsunade to ask him. As long as she's the one who will talk to him, he will definitely answer, but the problem is—" "There's no problem," Mitokado interrupted Sarutobi saying, send Tsunade immediately. There was a bitter smile on Sarutabi's face. In fact, Tsunade is very disappointed in Konoha, and it was clear that she no longer respects Sarutabi the same way as before. She has always rejected the way Konoha treated Naito, and his departure has troubled her very much. In war, it's only natural for Sarutabi to try and exploit the strength of the major clans in the village. It was necessary also for clans like the Hyuga and the Uchiha to save their power, thus if Konoha gets destroyed, they could survive and inherit the Will of Fire. The only difference is the Senju. The establishment of Konoha was based on the Senju's strength. Their belief is to absolutely keep Konoha, and they don't even care if they die fighting for it. In the Second Shinobi World War, the power of the Senju clan got reduced dramatically. Among all the other clans, the Senju has suffered the most. Tsunade was dissatisfied with how Konoha was handling this matter. The Senju was suffering a lot, which made that dissatisfaction rise to the level of hatred between its ranks. Konoha didn't think about joining its forces with clans, but to consume their strengths. This dark politician behavior has disappointed Tsunade. After sighting, Sarutabi didn't have a choice but to throw the ball and hope that Tsunade would accept to help. After a while, Tsunade came to the Hokage office. From a glance at the four elders that controlled Konoha in the office, her expression looked a bit indifferent. Why did the Hokage summon me to his office? Sarutabi was confused by Tsunade's tone. She didn't even call him sensei as she always does, although she was very close to him before. Sarutabi grinned bitterly, then he shook his head. I didn't summon you here to give you orders, it's more like a request. I'm asking you a favor as your teacher. Sarutabi knows that ordering Tsunade may make things more complicated. This was like a matter of life and death to Konoha, and he was willing to do anything so that the village can survive. The Hokage's orders are absolute. For a man of your position to ask a favor from me is too much. Tsunade looked like she has guessed what Sarutabi was gonna ask from her. However, her attitude was getting more indifferent. Sarutabi was bitter-hearted. However, he could only reply in a pleading tone, you know why you're here. The only way to change this situation is to ask for Naito's help, and you're the only one who can do it. When she heard Sarutabi's words, Tsunade revealed a hint of ridicule on her face, saying, if we need him this much, why did we let him leave in the first place? Just because he's an outsider. Is it the same reason why you're pushing the big clans into the war? You're all afraid of them growing up more powerful and compete for the authority. Sarutabi was quiet. He didn't know how to reply to these words. In Tsunade's point of view, Konoha has always tried desirably to suppress the big clans, but now they are using war to weaken them, which is too much. They even dared to treat the Senju clan the same way after the death of Hashirama and Tobirama Senju. I can do nothing about this matter. Mato Dai also has a good relationship with Naito, you can ask him for this favor. After she said this, Tsunade turned around to leave. Upon seeing this, Sarutabi couldn't help but scream at her. He couldn't ask Dai to do this because of his friendly personality. He would never be able to convince Naito to help Konoha. Tsunade, even if you don't care about me, your teacher, or any of the elders, would you say the same about Konoha? This sentence made Tsunade stop. Indeed, no matter how much she hated these elders and their policies, she would never feel the same about Konoha. After all, this village was established at the hands of her grandfather. Tsunade kept quiet for a long time, then she calmly opened, I will go, but only if you agree on accepting whatever Naito's conditions are to help, otherwise, I cannot guarantee success. No. Danza whispered. This. Mitokado and Utatane looked at each other. At this time, Sarutobi clenched his teeth, then said, "You have my word." "We're good." Tsunade suddenly turned and said, "This includes that if Naito asked to be the Hokage you will grant him this wish, you have to promise." Sarutobi nodded severely and said, "Yes." Danza got horrified and looked at Sarutobi saying, "Hey! You have no right. Do you think I'm gonna let Konoha fall?" Sarutobi suddenly released a powerful momentum, then he deadly stared at Danza, revealing his killing intent, and with an extremely harsh tone he said, "Moreover, Naito has never sought authority, he's not interested in becoming a Hokage." The silence has suddenly controlled the place. Mitokado turned at Utatane and nodded at her, then the two of them decided to support Sarutobi. Danza was left there all alone again, clenching his teeth, then he immediately stormed out of the office. The Rain Land. Tsunade found it really hard to cross the Land of Fire borders because of the 4 great villages' siege. However, using the Shrew technique, she could manage to reach the Land of Rain. Tsunade was much stronger than in the original and stopping her wasn't an easy matter, especially with that kind of speed. After she crossed the borders, every place and corner she encountered has made her heart exclaim. The Second Shinobi World War has brought a lot of distraction and blood to this land. However, now this land seems as if it suddenly turned into a piece from heaven. The place was full of happiness and warmness, free from war and hatred. Compared to the outside world, this place was like a holy land. This has made Tsunade sigh. If those people weren't so damn stubborn and obsessed by power and identity, and let Naito become the Hokage, perhaps the Land of Fire would have been just like this, a peaceful land. All the way forward, after she finally reached the Rain Village, Tsunade could see across the distance the Nanabi flying over the Rain Village. The Nanabi. Tsunade couldn't help but feel shocked. She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself the moment she felt the Nanabi's powerful chakra. Just what kind of a village the Rain has become after Naito's arrival. The Nanabi, the Kyuubi, along with Naito, with these 3 forces, there's no village from the 5 great ones is superior to the Rain. Coupled with the fact that the Rain Land is currently living in peace, made Tsunade couldn't help but admire Naito. The boy who struggled to survive in the beginning, has now become a leader strong enough to easily change the fate of a whole country. After she stepped into the scope of the Rain, Tsunade could feel a kind of sensation enchantment similar to that in Konoha, and she thought that this should be Kushina's work. No one came to stop Tsunade. It seems as if they knew about her arrival. However, no Shinobis has come to her even after she walked all the way toward the tallest building inside the village. Tsunade walked until she reached a spacious office. She put her hand on the door and gently opened it, and walked in. At first glance, she saw Naito smiling at her. Long time no see. Naito couldn't see Tsunade again after he left Konoha. Her arrival today was not unexpected. Although he is in the Rain, he also knows everything happening in the world, and he could figure out that Konoha was gonna come to him sooner or later. Even if they didn't like it, the only person who can save Konoha is Naito. In the past year, Naito has achieved 90% of the 2nd stage of the Sage Mode. He went to Mount Myoboku to practice 4 times. Just a few days ago, Naito had finished the 4th absorption of natural energy and returned to the Rain. It won't take long before the 2nd stage is completed. At the same time, Naito has also opened the 6th gate of the reverse Hashimon Tonku, and reached the 6th stage of this shock force. Indeed, it's been a long time. You've changed a lot. Tsunade smiled at Naito and walked over toward him. Then sit down. She looked around and said, "Where's Kushina?" Just when she asked, the door was opened again, and Kushina, who was holding a teapot and a cup, walked in smiling. "HolyOniiSama is visiting, there's no way I'm gonna miss that. It's really nice to see you." HolyOniiSama smiled at her. Kushina put the cup on the table, then she went straight to her side and sat down, saying, "I was really worried about you, I've always wanted to go out and see you." Kushina didn't care about their political situation, nor about the war. She was very concerned about HolyOniiSama because the former was very good to her. She has always considered her as a big sister, just like Naruto. "You don't have to worry, I don't participate in the front battles much, all that I'm doing is treating wounded people." HolyOniiSama took a sip from the cup, then she slightly showed a trace of sadness. Her brother Nawaki was dead, Naruto and Kushina have left the village, and most of her clan was destroyed. She couldn't help but feel lonely. Kushina couldn't help but to put her hand on HolyOniiSama's shoulder. Naruto on the other side looked helpless at that moment. Was it a mistake leaving her in Konoha? "Naruto, you should know that I didn't come here today just to see you, there's another reason behind this visit." HolyOniiSama turned her head and whispered to Naruto. Naruto nodded at her, then he took a sip from his cup, and said with a slight mockery, "Danza tried his best to keep me from staying in Konoha. Now after I left, they finally realized that they need me. I'm coming with you." I can't miss the look on their faces. "What do you mean?" HolyOniiSama looked confused. She didn't understand what Naruto meant, but she was gonna do her best to convince him to help Konoha. Naruto looked at her, then he smiled slightly, and said while joking, "You're my beloved sister, you can ask me anything." Looking at Naruto, HolyOniiSama sighed, then said, "This is the village that my grandfather has built, I can't just watch it get destroyed, even though I hate those damn politicians, and I really can't come to countenance them." Kushina stood up, then poured more tea to both Naruto and HolyOniiSama. Then she went to his side and sat down. Naruto drank his tea, then he looked at her and pinched her cheek really hard for no reason. Kushina looked really disgruntled at that moment. Naruto looked at her, then grinned. With a calm expression, Kushina stood up, then walked behind him and placed her hand on his shoulder, and squeezed. Hiss. Naruto felt like his heart has stopped at that moment. He turned to her to find that she grinned back at him. That little has even used Kurama's chakra to make it really painful. Naruto barely handled himself, then looked at HolyOniiSama and said, "So did those guys have any conditions?" Naruto reached out to his back and grabbed Kushina's hands so she cannot pull out any more pranks. HolyOniiSama shook her head, then with a slightly mocking expression she said, "They don't, this time, they won't even complain if you asked to be the Hokage." "Oh, so they even used the Hokage's card this time?" Naruto looked surprised. At that moment he couldn't help but smirk, imagining that scene in his mind, and what expression Danza will make when he sees him wearing the Hokage hat. Danza would be very angry by now, watching all of his plans getting ruined. "Do you really want to be the Hokage?" HolyOniiSama looked at Naruto with a trace of curiosity. "When I think about it, you're currently as strong as my grandfather, and your politician skills are almost as good as my second grandfather." Her second grandfather was Senju Tobirama, who was better as a politician than her grandfather, who was his brother Senju Hashirama. He was the man who established the first ninja school, and the founder of Konoha's military police. He was the man who created these systems, and the other great villages have followed his suit. No one can match the second Hokage when it comes to the politician. As for strength, there's still a gap between the first and me. Replying to HolyOniiSama, Naruto said these words not to look modes, he was just telling the truth. Tsunade has appreciated Naito's honesty, but at the same time she looked a little bit surprised. She simply didn't expect Naito to say such a thing. She initially thought that Naito was really close to her grandfather in terms of strength. However, when she thinks back about how he easily managed to suppress the Kyuubi before, she could feel that Naito is probably not that far from reaching Hashirama's level. As for being a Hokage, I have no interest. Naito shrugged. Naito is already busy managing the rain. Even with the help of Kanon and Yoriko, there's still a lot of troubles. However, if he becomes the Hokage, he will need to stay in the office all day long. And Naito will choose freedom over sitting all day in an office like a prisoner. When she heard Naito's response, Tsunade couldn't help but say with a smile, "It's really not your style." If Danza heard Naito's response, he would have shown a big disgusting grin on his face. In this case, Konoha has nothing to offer you back. Not it has. Naito looked at her, then smiled and said with a playful tone, "I'm quite interested in you, Tsunade-san." The moment he said that sentence, Kushina suddenly squeezed his shoulder too hard. It was a little painful. "What?" Tsunade squinted at Naito, then snorted, "Come again. I don't think I've heard you right." Naito helplessly looked at Kushina behind him, then at Tsunade, then said, "The two of you really? I feel like you've forgotten about my current status as the leader of the Rain Village. There are no good medical ninjas here. If I have sister here, it would be easy to set up a medical ninjas institution." Naito said what he had in his mind. However, he hid the fact that he knew that Tsunade was gonna be the fifth Hokage in the original. She's very talented when it comes to political skills. If she's here, she can help him with a lot of things. However, the only problem here is Konoha. They will never let the granddaughter of the first Hokage just leave. This sentence left both Kushina and Tsunade surprised. After a while, Kushina reacted and nodded gently at Tsunade. "Yeah, I will feel better if Tsunade-san stays here with us. There's no one else left in Konoha that you care about anyway," without mention that the situation has become very dangerous. Tsunade looked contemplative, sitting there without saying a word. Tsunade is different from other people. She has suffered a lot in the original. She didn't even care about the death of her teacher, nor about Konoha even when they asked her to become the next Hokage. If it wasn't for Naruto and Jiraiya, she wasn't gonna return to the village. She didn't feel like she belongs to Konoha anymore, especially when she discovered the true face of the village. Right, even if you feel like you're still bonded to Konoha, you can continue to help them. Although you're gonna stay in the rain, it doesn't mean that you're gonna be a rogue ninja. Naito nodded gently to Tsunade, then said, "And I don't think that anyone will dare to brand you as a rogue ninja." Tsunade had complex emotions thinking about this matter and kept silent, listening to Naito. Upon seeing this, Naito shrugged his shoulders, then he revealed his killing intent and said, "Didn't Konoha noted that I can ask for anything? Then my only condition is you staying in the rain. I really can't say no to you." At the same time, Tsunade knew that if this condition is gonna pass back to Konoha, Sarutobi and the others will agree to use her in exchange for Konoha's victory. This is the real face of these people. They would do anything for their benefit. Just like in the original when they sacrificed Hisashi's life in exchange for peace. This event was known later as the Hyuga Affair. Her disappointment in Konoha has made this decision even easier on Tsunade. After a while, she nodded at Naito and decided to stay with him. In exchange for this, Naito was gonna help Konoha with their battles against the Baijua. "So, when are you planning to go to Konoha, Naito?" Since the decision has been made, Tsunade looked once again severe and focused. Konoha was still strong, they weren't on the edge of falling, however, the situation was getting worse with every day passing. Since she decided to stay in the rain, she felt that she owed Konoha this one last favor. Now, Naito looked more severe than Tsunade has hoped. After she promised to stay, Naito stood up directly and walked outside of the room. This action has made even Kushina and Tsunade bows down to him. He's going now. It's not like him to be this vigorous and resolute. Especially during the last year, the degree of laziness he achieved was incredible. He did nothing but training all the days. He even handed the important documents to Kushina to deal with. Now, after just a promise, he's willing to go straight to the battlefield. Naito pushed the door open, then he flickered and appeared in the sky above the rain village. Naito has inexplicable light in his eyes, looking in the distance. Man, the third Shinobi World War is really boring. It's time to make it a little bit more interesting. In fact, even if it had nothing to do with them, Naito was gonna still participate in this war, especially when he knew that the Canopy Bridge event was gonna take place soon in this war. He wasn't gonna miss the opportunity to ruin Madara's plans. And he might even get the chance to finally meet him and end this for good. Naito turned behind at the Nanabi, who looked very bored. Nanabi, come over. Naito was still not used to call them by their names. Thus, he was more comfortable by just calling him Nanabi. Whoosh! The moment he heard his name, the Nanabi flew at top speed toward Naito. With a very respectful expression, he looked at Naito and said, "Boss. Did you call me?" Naito couldn't make himself like Nanabi's personality, however, he got used to ignoring his bluffing. Naito took a few steps, then jumped on his back. "Take me to Konoha." Naito was too lazy to run all the way to Konoha, and he went through all of those troubles to get the Nanabi for these kinds of situations. At this time, Tsunade, Kushina, and the others finally reached the top of the building. Looking at Naito standing on the Nanabi's back, she revealed a strange color, and said, "Did he really has subdued the Shichibi thoroughly? Kinda. That little bug really has such a character." Kushina raised her head and revealed a disdainful expression. Tsunade felt stunned by Kushina. She never thought that she can say such a thing, nor make such an expression. Wait, no. This feeling. It's not Kushina, it's the Kyuubi. Suddenly Tsunade fell back a few steps and took a fighting stance, thinking that the Kyuubi has broken the seal. Calm yourself, it's not like you have seen a beast. The Kyuubi said reluctantly with a lazy tone. Suddenly, the look on Kushina's face went back to normal. She looked at Tsunade awkwardly and said, "How embarrassing, it was Kyuubi talking. Just ignore him, he loves to prank people this way." Tsunade was confused for a long time looking at Kushina, then she finally realized, "You can control the Kyuubi's chakra." This sentence made Kurama dissatisfied. He couldn't help but complain to Kushina. "Controls me. I need to teach this little girl a lesson." Kushina helplessly looked at Tsunade and said, "I'm not controlling him, it's more like a partnership, he's my friend." Naito stood on the Nanabi's back, looking at Tsunade and Kushina. He decided to leave them in the rain. Even if Kushina wanted to go with him, he wouldn't let her. As for Tsunade, she just came from there, she needed to rest. Suddenly, under Naito's command, the Nanabi waved his wings, then flew away toward Konoha's direction at an incredible speed. Is that Naito or not? The ninjas and the civilians saw this scene and couldn't help but reveal a confused expression. The Shinobi who was carrying Naito on his back flew straight into the sky, and soon he passed directly through the thick clouds and reached a higher point above it. The Shinobi's speed was incredible. It didn't take him a lot of effort to pass the whole rain land and cross the fire borders. The sky was almost clear, and there weren't a lot of clouds. Just from a glance, Naito could see the land below them. The place was in a mess. Chaos was the only word that could describe the situation in the land of fire. The traces of battles could be seen everywhere. Looking at this scene, Naito had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. He couldn't help but think about his experience in the Second War and how he was struggling to survive at the time. Now Naito was standing in the sky and overlooking this war. The outer zone of the Fire Land. Although he still didn't reach the inner of the Fire Land, there was an ongoing battle. Thousands of Shinobis from Konoha came together, forming a huge army with the lead of Konoha's White Fang. However, the army's morale looked really low. Even Sakumo, who was leading them, had a dull expression. They came there to block the Sand advancement. Defending against one Baijua was hard enough, but now even the Sand has dispatched the Ichibi and attacked them, which made the pressure even worse for Konoha. Although they had Sakumo with them, even he couldn't stop these endless rampages of the Ichibi. Konoha was under enormous pressure, and the casualties were even worse. They were at a big disadvantage. Obviously, Konoha couldn't defeat the Sand forces, but they had to find a way to block them, because if they didn't, the Sand armies would reach the village, and Konoha will fall. Sakumo didn't try to comfort the Ichibi's Jinchuiki. Instead, he attacked the Sand's army behind. However, he didn't expect the 4th Kazekage to be the one who personally leads the Sand forces. Sakumo and the 4th Kazekage fought against each other several times. He, as Konoha's White Fang, was naturally strong, but the 4th Kazekage wasn't that weak too. These several encounters with the Kazekage didn't prove Sakumo's strength as Konoha's White Fang, but how weak the Sand's 4th Kazekage was. No matter how many times he tried, the Kazekage couldn't break Konoha's defense. In the end, the Kazekage fell back and left the task to Ichibi and his armies. Sakumo knew this was his chance to put an end to this battle before he loses all of his men. This time we're gonna try and seal the Ichibi, but first we need to defeat the Sand's army. Later we retreat again, and hit the Ichibi with all what we got. Sakumo knew that the morale of his team was on the verge of collapsing at any time. Thus, he needed to act fast. After he gave the instructions, Konoha's Shinobis regrouped themselves immediately. They were outnumbering the Sand's army, but the Ichibi's power alone was worth hundreds of men. However, he didn't have a choice. These were all the men Konoha could provide him. They were the last line before the village. Suddenly a huge figure appeared from a distance in the middle of the battlefield. Just from its appearance, the whole battlefield trembled. Even the ground under them started moving and turned into sand. Seeing Ichibi's appearance, made Konoha's Shinobis movements stagnated. It doesn't matter how many times they encountered him, he has never failed to make them panic. Even the elites had a bit of fear in their eyes. The amount of chakra he was surging was enough to make them feel terrified. Don't panic. Under Sakumo's command, 6 of the finest Jonins in Konoha's army rushed toward the Ichibi and attacked him. The Ichibi looked in a state of incomparable anger. He was being used by humans for a while now. Every time they release him, they use him to attack, then seal him back again, which made him feel furious and considered all the people on the battlefield enemies. Because the seal wasn't completely broken, the Sand Shinobis has only needed to close it to suppress the Ichibi. On the other side, Konoha Shinobis were in a bigger problem. They actually needed to deal with him every time. You damn humans, die. With both hands, the Ichibi surged his chakra violently, turning the entire battlefield into waves of sand. Quicksand waterfall flow. The sand has surrounded Konoha's Shinobis from every side, while the sand ninjas looked like they already used to deal with the Ichibi's method. After they released him in the middle of the battlefield, they simultaneously withdrew. Only Konoha's Shinobis remained. The Ichibi will not care on what side you are, whether you're from Konoha or from the sand. In his eyes, all humans are trash, and they should be all damned. Although Konoha's Shinobis under Sakumo's commands have been ordered to block those sand waves, some of them got blown away by its power. The Ichibi's eyes were glowing with deadly stares, ready to fire a sand blast and bury all of those damned humans. Suddenly the 6 Jonins surrounded the Ichibi, forming a hexagonal formation. 6 Violet Flames Formation. The 6 ninjas screamed these words at the same time. In an instant, Purple's rays raised from their bodies and connected with each other in the form of a hexagon barrier with the Ichibi trapped in the middle. This technique is an improved version of the 4 Violet Flames formation. It could even hold 2 of the strongest characters in the original. However, the range of this technique is too small to trap a big enemy like the Ichibi in it. Sakumo chose 6 ninjas to use this technique. This formation has also separated the sand Shinobis from the Ichibi and blocked the sand waves. Looking at this scene, Konoha's ninjas looked stunned at first, then they felt relieved. It worked. We trapped that monster. Great, now we can deal with the sand Shinobis. Their cheerful expressions gradually turned cold and murderous. In an instant, the odds of winning on the battlefield have turned. The numbers of the sand Shinobis has initially been small, and this momentum that Konoha Shinobis has gained helped them press them immediately, and they were on the verge of collapsing. However, at that time, waves of laughter and madness came out from the barrier, attracting everyone's attention. The Ichibi looked at the barrier, then began to smash it from every corner with his massive body. This kind of garbage enchantment won't stop me. Who do you think you're dealing with here? The Ichibi was laughing loudly, making everyone feels terrified. Suddenly he gazed at the 6 ninjas who were maintaining the barrier with disdain. Do you even know what my specialty is? Sealing techniques. Suddenly, the Ichibi waved his claws while surging an enormous amount of chakra and slammed the barrier several times with wind releases. You need a more powerful seal than this to stop me. Boom! The cracks began to appear on the barrier, and just after a few more shots, the wall got shattered. Unless they seal him back into his Jinchuriki, even an improved version of the 4 Violet Flame formation won't stop the tailed beast. The barrier cracked open instantaneously. The 6 ninjas didn't have time to respond. They get swept away by that terrifying chakra, and died. Just when they were in an advantage for the first time in a long time, they got crushed once again by their enemies, which dropped their morale and momentum at the very bottom. The 6 Violet Flame formation got destroyed. He's too powerful. This is horrible, we won't be able to defeat him. They couldn't help but recall that time when the Kyuubi accident happened, and how they felt so powerless as they are right now. Although there's a big gap between the Ichibi and the Kyuubi, they are still as weak as that time. Once again they simply were gonna crush. Even Sakumo's expression was gloomy. He was clenching his teeth, not knowing what he should do next. He didn't expect that the Ichibi will break the barrier this easily. He obviously miscalculated the situation. Retreat. Without any hesitation, Sakumo ordered Konoha's forces to retreat. The Ichibi got out, and there's no chance for them to win this battle. The only choice is to flee. He learned from the previous battles that once the Ichibi is released, It will be impossible for them to defend. Keeping the fight any longer will only mean more casualties. Thus, in the face of the Ichibi, they can only retreat. Damn humans, I won't let you escape again. Obviously, the Ichibi has also faced this situation several times. With endless wrath in his eyes, the Ichibi fired several wind releases at them. Wind release, drilling air bullet. The horror of these wind bullets continually fall, only the Jonin could barely use some defensive ninjutsu to block it. As for the Genin and the Chunin, they didn't have any strength to resist. They stopped moving and looked at that massive wind bullet coming toward them. They couldn't really do anything. Suddenly, Konoha's white fang flashed in front of them and smashed it. Go! He really wanted to kill that monster in front of him, but that was simply impossible. Even if he fought against him for hours, there's no chance of winning. The Shinobis kept retreating under Sakumo's protection. No one thought about stopping and supporting Sakumo against that beast. In their point of view, that monster was invincible. One thing they didn't dare to do is look back. However, one thing made them stop and looked at the sky. That is, no. This is impossible. When they saw that thing in the sky, they could no longer move. Some of them has even dropped their weapons on the ground. That thing in the sky was huge and massive. They could run, but sure it could catch them in no time because that thing had wings. That thing was the Nanabi. Why is the Nanabi here? This time, even Sakumo couldn't help but exclaim. The look on his face was full of bitterness. Even the slightest chance of escaping is no longer possible. Moreover, the most terrifying thing about this whole situation is that the Nanabi has landed in front of those troops who were escaping. They just got trapped between two-tailed beasts. This is the end. Adele. Konoha's Shinobis looked desperate. Even the idea of running away was gone. There's nothing left for them to do. Death was chasing them from every corner. Sakumo clenched his teeth, and the look on his face changed. He made his choice. He was gonna fight and help as many people escape as possible. Suddenly, he heard a familiar voice that let him stop. You're stronger than this, old man. Why are you having a hard time dealing with one-tailed beast? Everyone could hear that voice coming from the Nanabi. It didn't take them a long time before they could figure out that someone was standing on the back of the Nanabi, and they were actually very familiar with that face. On the battlefield, all of Konoha Shinobis froze there, looking stunned at the person who was standing at the Nanabi's back. Finally, someone responded cheerfully. Naito. You Naito. Great. It turned out to you Naito. There's hope. Although he left them to become the Rain's leader, Konoha has never defined Naito as a rogue ninja, and the Shinobis has always kept their admiration for him. Watching Naito actually standing there on the Nanabi and back to this battlefield, has made everyone shocked, and feared for what he became. In the distance, when the Ichibi saw the Nanabi, he seemed slightly stunned. He temporarily stopped attacking and stared at him. However, he couldn't see Naito because he was too small compared to him. Kurama likes to judge the strength of the other tailed beasts based on the number of tails they have. This obviously makes the Ichibi the weakest between all of them, and for that reason he always hated him. However, in reality, the Ichibi wasn't the weakest among all the Baijua. At least he's not inferior in strength to the Nanabi who was in front of him, because his abilities are focused on flexibility and flying. The relationship between the Baijua is not that harmonious, and you can say the same about these two. Their relationship wasn't good, but also not bad. Hey! Help me kill these damn humans. The Ichibi was too lazy to communicate with the Nanabi telepathically, so shouted at him from a distance. The Nanabi could hear him, but he didn't reply. The Ichibi knew nothing about his situation. This damned Ichibi talks like he knows everything. Killing humans together with him. Then what they will do about that beast standing on his back? Seeing how the Nanabi didn't answer him, the Ichibi became furious. He wouldn't be this angry if he just refused, but what is this? Is he ignoring me? He was already angry, and ignoring him has only made his temper even worse, and without any hesitation, he attacked the Nanabi. Wind release, drilling air bullet. Looking at this scene, the Nanabi on the other side has also lost his temper. Thinking that the Ichibi was looking down on him because he's inferior in terms of strength. Besides, the Nanabi wanted to put an excellent performance in front of Naito. Thus, he roared and smashed the air bullet with one wing and rushed straight toward him. The Ichibi was already in a rampage state, and looking at how the Nanabi was rushing toward him made him roar and jump directly into the fight. Boom! 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 Heaven shaking, earth shattering, the unceasing ground disintegrated, and the sand scattered around the Nanabi. The entire battlefield seemed to have turned into hell on earth for a moment. All of the Shinobis from Konoha were retreating with terrified expressions on their faces. This kind of power. It's not something humans can deal with at all. This is the power of monsters. The two beasts were fighting violently, but Naito was no longer on the Nanabi's back, he was actually standing beside Sakumo. Looking at him, Sakumo couldn't help but sigh and say, "We still need your help." The scars were covering Sakumo's body, he was hardly injured in the Second World War. However, in the Third, he repeatedly confronted the Ichibi to cover his comrades while retreating. Although he was talking to him, Naito wasn't looking at Sakumo, he was actually staring at another person at the rear. This person was still young, he looked like a teenager, wearing a mask on his face, with silver hair just like Sakumo. Just from looking back at the former he could recognize his identity. Hatake Kakashi. Kakashi is now a Chunin, he graduated at the age of 5 from the ninja school, and at the age of 6, he became a Chunin. Some people defined him as a person who has an incomparable dazzling talent, they even compared him with Naito and Namikaze Minato. Kakashi has seen Minato, but he never saw Naito. He was inquisitive about the legendary Naito. At this time, Kakashi was also watching Naito from the crowd. This fellow. Is he really as strong as the legends say? Kakashi couldn't help but wonder since he couldn't feel anything special from Naito. They looked very similar. Naito has also had silver hair, but Kakashi's was a little bit shorter. He wasn't also wearing the ninja's uniform but a snow robe. There's nothing special about him, he doesn't feel like father. How does he control the Nanabi? In Kakashi's view, Naito didn't look like he could control a beast as strong as the Nanabi, although he heard about the stories of Naito defeating the Kyuubi. Kakashi didn't see him in action because he was performing a task outside of the village at the time. When Kakashi was watching Naito from the crowd, Naito looked back at him. On this battlefield, Kakashi is probably the youngest. It seems he's 10 years old, he should be in Minato's team by this time, but it appears that the plot has changed again. Obviously, the war was the reason behind all of these changes. The two Baijua were still fighting violently, and the whole battlefield was trembling. Looking at this scene, Kakashi seemed very calm, although he was still young. He walked to Naito and Sakumo, then looked at him and said, "Father, I think it's better if we retreat." Kakashi felt that the situation was hazardous. The two beasts were fighting each other, although Naito looks like he can control the Nanabi, Yet who can trust a monster? What if he decided to change sides and attack them? It will be a terrible situation. Sakumo looked at Kakashi and shook his head, then said, "No." "Why?" Kakashi looked confused when he heard his father's reply. Sakumo didn't answer Kakashi, but Naito turned at him with a smile and said, "Is this the famous Konoha's genius ninja who graduated from the ninja school by the age of 5 and become a Chunin by the 6th? Take Kakashi. No one can claim to be a genius in front of you, Naito or not." When he heard Naito, Sakumo couldn't help but reply with a smile. "What?" Kakashi felt more confused, looking at both of them. The strong wind swept across the world, while the golden sand was coercing around the entire place. The fight between the Ichibi and the Nanabi made the ground tremble while their roars and horrible chakra exploded in the field. This is the real power of the Baijua. Even a Kage will have a hard time dealing with them. It's impossible to be resisted. Only the strongest Kages will barely fight against it. Still, it's always challenging to win. They won't be able to defeat them, they could only hope to seal them, but only if it's a weaker Baijua. If they are dealing with the Hakkaibi or the Kyuubi, even sealing them will be difficult. Konoha Shinobis looked terrified watching these two Baijua fight. They have never expected the Nanabi to appear on this battlefield, and have such a fierce battle with the Ichibi. But how did he come here? And why is he fighting with the Ichibi? Whoosh! The dust was continually rising, blocking everyone's vision, but because of their massive sizes, they could still see their battle clearly. "You mad filthy tanuki, if you're looking for your death, I won't stop you." The Nanabi slammed the Ichibi with his body on the ground, then he flew into the sky. "You damn bug, you think you're all big and might trying to fight with me?" The Ichibi looked furious, he wasn't gonna play easily on the Nanabi anymore. Thus, he opened his mouth and released a Baiju Udama. Whoosh! The horrible chakra condensed into a big black ball that made everyone on the battlefield feel the pressure. Such a high-density chakra release will only bring death once it hit. Seeing how the Ichibi was willing to use the Baiju Udama, the Nanabi decided to fight fire with fire. He just wanted to stop him from getting beaten by Naito, but he doesn't seem like he appreciates it. Therefore, he better die. The Nanabi who was flying in the sky opened his mouth and condensed his chakra, forming a big Baiju Udama. The next moment, the two Baiju Udama flew toward each other and collided in midair. Boom! It seemed as if two suns have crashed into each other in the field. The impact was strong that even made the mountains far away shake. Endless rays of light converged on the battlefield, making the ninjas around unable to open their eyes. Suddenly, a loud roar emitted from the battlefield, and made them feel like if the whole world was collapsing. This horrifying power made everyone feel stunned. The level of this technique. I'm afraid that even an S-class ninjutsu cannot be compared with it. Kakashi has also looked shocked. As the son of Konoha's White Fang, he saw an S-class ninjutsu before, but in his opinion, even an S-class ninjutsu cannot be compared to a Baiju Udama. Even Sakumo felt terrified by its power, and it seemed that these two beasts were still on the move. After the two Baiju Udama collided, it seemed that the power of the two Baijua is equally matched. However, the one who was controlling the field was the Ichibi. Watching his own Baiju Udama getting blocked made the Ichibi feel annoyed. Although he was controlling the field by making it like a desert, the Nanabi was still flexible because he could fly, and attacking him in the air was such a pain to the Ichibi. Therefore, the Ichibi didn't think twice about it and used his strongest attack again. The Nanabi saw this and couldn't help but think how much this fellow does not appreciate his kindness. Even if they keep this, he won't understand. Therefore, the Nanabi simply stopped fighting. When the Baijiu Dama was heading toward him, he just avoided it by flying higher in the sky. Then he suddenly flew toward Konoha's ninjas at the rear. The Ichibi didn't care about them and fired again. Die fool! Crap! Kakashi, who has just witnessed the power of the Baijiu, couldn't help but panic. Such a power cannot be resisted by a human being. Once it falls, there will be nothing left, only everyone's bones. At this time, Kakashi couldn't help but look at his father, hoping that he could do something about it. However, looking at the Baijiu Dama heading toward them, Sakumo didn't try to pull out his white fang moves, maybe because even if he did it will be useless. Although his Kenkiri technique is reliable, it still belongs to the human category. Blocking a Baijiu Dama needs another level of power. Seeing how his father didn't react, Kakashi's heart sank in despair, looking at the Baijiu Dama falling on them. Naito, who was standing beside them, faintly opened all of a sudden. The Nanabi's power is equal to the Ichibi. He won't be able to defeat him alone. Suddenly he extended his hand, then he simply banded his finger. Suddenly, under Kakashi's gaze, the horrifying Baijiu Dama that had enough power to kill everyone in the battlefield got shattered by a simple snap from Naito's finger. Bang! The powerful Baijiu Dama that had the power to destroy a whole village get disintegrated just inches away from Naito's finger. Currently, whether it's a fist or a finger, the level that Naito has reached allows him to condense a massive amount of shock force at will. Boom! The explosion sound was too loud that Kakashi felt that his mind has gone blank. However, this wasn't the time to faint out. What did he just see? A finger snap has destroyed the Baijiu Dama. It was just like a dreamlike scene. What power is this? The power of this Baijiu Dama has surpassed the S-class ninjutsu in Kakashi's opinion. Naito didn't move, he didn't use a hand sign, he just did a simple snap. It didn't only block the Baijiu Dama, it as if has turned it invisible. It's as if it didn't exist in the first place. Naito. Is he really a human? Not only Kakashi, but all the ninjas on the battlefield also looked shocked, even if some of them has already witnessed Naito defeating the Kyuubi before. It didn't make this any less incredible. For a second, all of them looked at Naito with endless awe. Shukaku. It seems you have forgotten all about me. I don't blame you, it's been a long time. It seems that I should teach you another lesson. After he dealt with the Baijiu Dama, Naito looked faintly at the furious Ichibi, then he strolled toward him. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The pace was plodding, but after a few steps, his body gradually started to disappear like an illusion. Whoosh! Suddenly he looked like teleported, as he directly appeared on the top between the two Baijiu. The Nanabi saw Naito, then he immediately fell back with a smirk on his face. The Ichibi looked angry, he didn't really focus on his face, all that he saw was a human being trying to interfere with his fight, which made him suddenly get crazy. You garbage, don't you ever dare to interfere, get lost. The Ichibi suddenly tried to hit Naito with the back of his claw as if he was some kind of a fly. However, before it could even reach him, his paw suddenly stagnated halfway. Naito, who was floating in the air, stared at the Ichibi at the bottom. With one hand Naito suppressed the space in front of him. The Ichibi, who recklessly tried to attack him, felt a strange force wrapping his claws, crushing it. Bang! Suddenly his hand got shattered into pieces. A destroyed part is not a problem for a Baijiu because he could regenerate it. But what was that strange feeling of severe pain that spread throughout his whole body just now? Roar! The Ichibi screamed out pain, These nightmares from the past have finally come back to haunt him after all of these many years. The Ichibi could finally recognize who was this man in front of him. With eyes full of horror and fear, he looked at Naito. "It's you. You're that damn." "What?" The Ichibi's sound was so loud that Naito couldn't help but strike him again to interrupt him from talking. Boom. Although Naito's attacks didn't connect with the Ichibi directly, the power of the shock force was surely slamming him hard every time. Moreover, Naito wasn't going any easy on the Ichibi. He was using all of his force, which made even the ground under them collapse. Bang! Under the impact of these several hits, a huge deep hole has appeared on the ground. And with Naito's last kick, the Ichibi got bombarded into the center of that hole. Kakashi was widely opening his mouth, his mask has almost slipped off his face looking at this scene. The ninjas at the rear were stunned, they couldn't help but admire this outrageous power. This is the power of you, Naito. Sure enough, if he could easily defeat the Kyuubi, the Ichibi will be nothing compared to him. Fortunately, Naito is not our enemy, otherwise. These Konoha ninjas looked at the sand Shinobis in the distance not with anger, nor with killing intent, they looked as if they felt sorry for them. At this moment, the sand Shinobis looked as if they got frozen in their places, with an unbelievable look on their faces. The moment they have finally recognized Naito's identity, the shock in their heart reached the limit. In fact, some of these Shinobis have actually witnessed Naito murdering the third Kazekage, and defeating the Ichibi before. However, this time, Naito looked way more powerful. This time, Naito wasn't fighting seriously, there was no fierce battle like before, he was just kicking and punching the Ichibi like a sandbag. If this continues, if he keeps fighting on Konoha's side, the formers will also be unstoppable in this war. His strength has reached an incredible degree, compared to him a few years ago, the gap is like the one between heaven and earth. Is this the real strength of the Naito? Compared to what he was a few years ago, Naito has grown up way stronger, he's just like a god. I hope he kills you, filthy mad raccoon. The Nanabi was having the best of his time in the sky looking at the Ichibi getting his butt smashed by Naito because he already experienced this situation, he felt really comfortable watching another Baijuo living the same one. Naito suddenly fell from the sky and came to the bottom of that hole. The Ichibi wasn't there, but there was another person who was full of scars. Obviously, the Ichibi has sealed himself back into his Jinchuriki so he could escape from Naito. Naito looked at the Nanabi in the sky, and the former flew down directly, revealing incomparable loyalty and respect. Boss, just say the word. Take him away. Naito couldn't help but get used to Nanabi's character. At some point, the Nanabi has started to convince him that he's just this loyal. The Nanabi extended his hand and grabbed the Ichibi's Jinchuriki, then flew back to the sky. At the same time, he entered the mental world of the Ichibi's Jinchuriki. Wow, finally some quiet, this is actually comfortable, no wonder the Kyuubi has always despised you, you really have no brain. You're scared that even the inside of your Jinchuriki's mind is all sand. The Nanabi kept flying around while talking to the Ichibi. The Ichibi looked furious, but he couldn't help but say painfully, damn, fighting that human being is always painful, and now he seems even stronger than when I met him a few years ago. What? You got your butt beaten by him a few years ago? Ha 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 ha. This is hilarious. The Ichibi's was depressed to the point that he didn't want to pay attention to the Nanabi's mockery. He was fine fighting with the Nanabi, but the moment Naito attacked him, he felt like his body was gonna tear apart, moreover, he could feel all of that pain. His heart has sunk in horror, but he knew for sure that the next time he meets Naito, he will never try to fight him. He's too strong and fighting him is so painful, he's just like a bully. After ordering the Nanabi to take the Ichibi's Jinchuriki, Naito took a glimpse at the sand Shinobis in the distance. Almost all of them were frozen in their places looking at him, and after they noticed Naito staring back at them, they widened their eyes, and the cold sweat started to appear on their foreheads. They simply were scared. "I'll leave them to you." After he stared at them, Naito didn't attack, but jumped on the Nanabi's back, while Konoha's Shinobi stood there calmly. Later, the Nanabi left the battlefield with Naito on his back. Watching Naito leaving, the way the two sides looked at him seemed very different. Konoha's Shinobi were revealing their killing intent looking at the sand ninjas in the distance, thinking that this was their chance to finally get revenge. On the other side, the sand ninja looked terrified, some of them gave the order, and suddenly all of them fled. Konoha's forces weren't gonna let them escape that easily, and chased them. In the crowd, Kakashi was still looking at the direction Naito took when he left with an intimidating expression. At that time, he seemed like he finally understood his father's words. Indeed, in Naito's presence, no person can be called a genius. Kakashi had no idea what he can do to reach such a level. This is a power that no human can achieve, it's even beyond the reach of a genius. This is the true power of the demigod. The power of you, Naito. Kakashi couldn't help but whisper softly. Sakumo stood next to him and patted his shoulder, then whispered, "Some people are just impossible to be caught up." It was always like that, even when he was young. However, there was a time when he was weak. If Naito could do it, there's always a chance for you to catch up to him. Ask him more about it if you want. After he captured the Jinchuriki, Naito was no longer interested in the battlefield. He directly ordered the Nanabi to head toward Konoha. Soon he crossed half of the land of fire, and reached the sky above the village. He took a glance below at the village, and it was just like he remembers, and the same as the original, a peaceful, lively land. However, at the same time, the atmosphere felt a little bit dark. It's as if everyone in the village were feeling the pressure of the Third World War. There are ninjas in Konoha who were monitoring the entire village. They were also looking for any spies who might act differently, while others were guarding the place against any enemies that may attack from the sky at any time. In this world, only a few people can fly, but there are few tailed beasts who can. The Mist Village has special fog ninjutsu that can help them organize a surprise attack. The Rock Village has special equipments that helps them attack from the underground, while the Clouds have a high speed that allows them to do raids. To put it simply, they can be attacked at any moment, and from any place. Therefore, Konoha had ninjas everywhere, ready for any kind of enemies. At that moment, some of them could notice a strange thing in the sky approaching them. The moment they saw that shadow appear in the sky, they immediately started moving. Whoosh! The Nanabi was heading below toward the village at high speed. That's tailed beast. The Nanabi. Shit. The ninjas raised their heads and looked at the sky. They all looked horrified, and for the civilians, they were even more frightened. Some of them were already running everywhere, trying to escape. The Nanabi was enjoying the moment, letting his presence out. Naito was standing on his back, aware of what he was trying to do, but he was too lazy to stop him. Instead, he let him continue, which made Nanabi carry on and release out his chakra violently, and led Sarutobi and the others to come out. He already received a report from the battlefield saying that Naito has finally come to support them, and he managed to easily defeat the Ichibi and caught his Jinchuriki. However, he couldn't help but feel shocked when he saw him on the back of the Shinobi. Naito has never failed to make him feel this way every time he encountered him. Some of the ninjas and civilians could see Naito standing on the back of the Shinobi, which made them exclaim, "That's you, Naito." Konoha never defined Naito as a rogue ninja, nor they dared to describe his actions as an act of rebellion. Thus, in the eyes of the civilians and low-class ninjas, Naito was traveling in the world and ended up fighting with the rain. Thanks to his braveness, the rain was taken over by them. Seeing Naito standing on the Shinobi's back made all of them feel like if they were looking at God himself, which led them to reveal their awe and admiration. That moment made them feel emotionally broken. And the joy suddenly controlled their hearts. If Naito is here, then the Third World War is definitely won't be a problem. In the eyes of many people, Naito was a god. Even Sarutobi's reputation as the Hokage of the village couldn't be compared to Naito's. Under the gaze of everyone in the village, Naito leaped from the Shinobi's back and landed in front of Sarutobi. "You Naito, you came." Looking at Naito, Sarutobi's emotions were a bit complicated. He couldn't figure out what he should feel about Naito's actual arrival. However, after a sigh in his heart, he greeted him with a smile on his face. For the invincible Hokage, to feel nervous facing Naito is an incredible thing. However, the situation was different. It was a life and death matter to Konoha, and only Naito could save them from this crisis. Even if he's the Hokage, he needed to pull the best of an act for Naito. Almost every time Naito met him, Sarutobi's attitude was different. He was smiling, but he couldn't hide how nervous he was behind it. Naito was thinking of several things he could say and do to this man who made Kushina suffer, because of his weak character and small vision, but he chose not to. After all, Sarutobi was okay, not a good or a bad person, and at least way better than Danza. That's it for this video, guy. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Also tell me your recommendations in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.